Hello there, Ray here. I'm joined by one of the fellow project members, Poison Dagger.
Hello.
And today, guys, we have a very unique farm behind us using the new 1.15 bees. And this is a automatic crop farm that can produce potatoes, carrots, wheat, their seeds, beets, and their seeds, and even get honeycombs as well as honey bottles all from this one device. This is definitely a must-have for any person playing 1.15 survival. And this thing is very compact, as you can see, yet very efficient. So if you guys do enjoy these type of videos, be sure to go ahead and subscribe. Let's get into how this cool farm works. So with the bees' abilities to make crops increase in growth, we went ahead and tried to design a farm to take advantage of this. This was the first design over here where we had crops, and then we had the flowers, and the bees kind of had to go past the crops in order to go back to their hives. So the bees would come out of their hives, walk across their crops, go over here, pick up pollen, then they get these little white flecks on their butt, and then they would start flying back to their hive, and then they would see the little particles dribble off of them. Every once in a while, they will increase the growth stages of the crops. Now we noticed some problems with a small design like this. First off, the bees were easily able to go from the flowers directly into the hive. If the flowers were too close to the hive, they could just hop in without actually having to travel over there, and therefore they wouldn't spend much time trying to dribble off pollen onto the crops to make them grow. So we went ahead and put in more bees, as there only could be 3 bees in the hive, so by having extra bees in here, they kind of just have to stand here and fly around and wait for the other bees to leave, and this will give more time for them to drop pollen onto the crops to make them grow. But overall, there was a problem that the crops just weren't growing, as the bees were just too close to the crop. So it seemed that the bees actually had to be a little ways up above them before they're able to use the pollen to have them grow. So by increasing the height of their cage, they're more likely to drop pollen and have the crops grow. You can see this one here has grew up a little bit, but even then it's not very efficient. As you can see, they all have pollen on them, but very rarely are they actually increasing in the growth. We also tried some other setups here where we have the hives for the bees far on one end, and then we have the flower that they want to go to on the other side with a whole bunch of crops in between. So they have to travel between these 2 points in order to get the flower and try to bring back the nectar to their hive. And during the whole time, they're going to be flying over top of these crops here and having them grow up. And this sort of worked, but a lot of times the bees would kind of all end up one side. It wouldn't really travel the entire distance. They would kind of clog over here. There's also some other designs here where it's kind of scattered out between the flowers and the crops. Poison Dagger made a early design that was working pretty good, where he put a lot of height for the bees to fly up and down, in which case they would kind of fly up to the top and then they would drop pollen down onto the crops. He also had the flower elevated from the height in which the crops were at. This seemed to improve the chances of them pollinating the crops, as most of the time they'd be up at the level of the flower. He also put a villager in here, which is able to reach all the cropland and harvest the crops when they're fully grown and then replenish them. This way you can automatically harvest the crops. Now this is working pretty good until the bees ran out of chances to pollinate the crop. So once they go to the flower, they are given a limited number of times that they can pollinate crops after that. So if we look at the data of this bee, you can see he has crops grown since pollination, and it is 0. Once it reaches 10, they're unable to pollinate any more crops. And they won't go back to the flower to reset this because since they already have nectar on them. So what they then have to do is go to the beehive, remove the nectar as well as the pollen, and then come back to the flower and repeat the process. And this will bring the pollination number back to 0 so they can start pollinating again. The real trouble came when we try to introduce hives, such as this situation here. When the bees come out of the hives, they do try to place them inside of nearby blocks around the hive. So you do have to try to put in a lot of blocks around the edges to prevent them from escaping. But once those areas are filled in, then they will automatically go into this open area over here. We also hooked up one of my automatic bee farms onto here as well, so that not only are we having crops growing, we also are collecting either the honeycomb or the honey bottles. Now during the stream, Bee Brian came up with a little bit different design where the bees kind of move between 4 flowers and the crops are underneath of a block, and then the bees will actually pollinate this crop from underneath here. It is also pretty effective as the bees are kind of bumping around quite often, and therefore they have a lot of time to drop pollen onto the plant below. But it ran into the same problem as the other ones where it would run out of times that we could pollinate the plant below. We did notice that introducing a beehive just to the outside of this would actually make them work quicker and also pollinate faster as well, even though they couldn't get to the beehive. Now by having them go into the beehive, we had ran into some problems with them trying to escape the area. So we decided to try to improve upon Poison Dagger's design by having the bees be able to go into the hive as well as pollinate the plants. So that's why we have this design over here. We have 2 chambers where we have bees. So there is a hive over here with some bees in this chamber over here, And then there's a second hive as well as bees over here. Both chambers are exactly the same. You can see the bees are increasing the growth of these crops just by flying over top of them. And then the villager, once completely grown, the village will harvest a crop and plant down a new one. And because the bees are kind of hovering between this flower as well as this empty space above it, they have a lot higher chance of pollinating the plants. And we also introduced the hive up above them. So now once the other bees that are inside of it leave, these bees can go inside. But we can prevent the bees from going in too fast by having at least 4 bees inside of each of these chambers, because 3 bees will be inside, and then we can have at least 1 bee in here hovering up and down, still continuing to grow the crops. We went ahead and turned down the game rule for random ticks, so it's actually set to 0. This way it's easy to see if the crops are actually being grown by the bees or not. Because with random ticks turned on, crops could naturally grow all by themselves. Now the bees do leave the hive. There is some quirkiness in which way they come out. It seems like they're trying to put into the northwest corner if all the other places are blocked. And that's why we have all this glass around the edges. Most of it just to block areas where the bee will try to go. And that way this beehive will place bees in the northwest corner, which is right over here. And I'll place it right kind of inside this block right here. And then the bee will be able to clip through and come back over here. Same thing for these bees over here. They'll be placed in this block over here, and they'll be able to clip through and come back out. We can actually watch them come out. They'll be placed over here inside this glass. There you see, bee was kind of placed right here, and then he was able to come out. And notice as soon as he came out, another bee was able to go into the beehive. There comes the other bee. You see how he's put inside this glass, and he comes back out again. And this way they're constantly able to trade off, so the bees that have pollen will sit here for quite a while, hopping up and down, and are able to use most of their pollination up before the bee can come out. Now I thought about trying to just close off the hive and then count like how many times the crop grows. That was getting pretty complicated, and it turns out this works really well just to have the bees kind of hover up and down. Now the bees can kind of hover between this block here and up here. This gives them plenty of room to be able to have the crops grow. And there's also a flower just over here that's a little bit higher. So when they're actually working at this flower, they can kind of stand over here and work at the flower too. And they're able to fit in here even if there is like 3 bees down here. I wouldn't recommend going over 6 bees, 3 bees inside and 3 bees here, because then it can get a little bit crowded. I did put panes on this side just to kind of help the bees be able to move past each other if they want to get up into the nest. Now we did try putting this on all 4 sides. Problem is, because the bees kind of come out in the northwest corner, the bees from this corner and this corner will all end up on these 2 chambers if we would add them in here. So then all the bees would kind of end up in 2 chambers once again instead of being on all 4 of them. I'm sure they're going to probably change the way bees come out of hives because right now it's a little bit finicky. But at the moment this design works really well. We also have put in an automatic system to harvest the hives. So once they get to power level of 5, which is enough to harvest them for honey, we attach that simple honeycomb farm over there to this. So we have shears in here, and it'll just go around. Once it is full, it'll activate it, and then it'll shear them. And the items can either fall down onto the farmland and then get picked up by this hopper, or most likely they will kind of pop out the top and end up in these hoppers and end up in this chest over here. We also have the glass bottles on this dispenser, which will give us the honey bottles. So not only can you get like the honeycomb and honey bottles, but you can also get whatever crop you want to farm up. And down here is the chest where the farmer is farming up crops. We actually got quite a few crops right just with 1 farmer and 2 farmland. This doesn't use any bone meal, and it's really compact and efficient. That's a little hard to tell exactly what the rates of this farm will be. This is about 1 hour of the farmer working. And it seems to work really good too. Just watching it is kind of cool. Seeing the bees go in and out and start growing the crops, and the farmer being able to automatically harvest them. Now the crops that you can have inside this farm are wheat, beets, carrots, or potatoes. If you pull up F3, you can see in the top right hand corner that it says that it is bee growable. It's right here. So anything that has this bee growables is able to be grown by the bees. So most other crops are not able to be grown by them. So like all this stuff back here can't be grown with them. Even like melons and pumpkins, bees aren't able to grow them, or like tree saplings. Which is a little bit strange because something like melons and pumpkins, in real life, bees actually do help pollinate those. Where stuff like wheat actually isn't pollinated by bees in real life. So who knows, maybe they'll also add pumpkins and melon to this list as well. Now you do need to use bee nest when going ahead and building up this farm, as the hives that are player made are actually currently not really working when bees come to actually increase the level of them. They'll go inside them, but they won't add honey to them. So actually spawned in this box you see here, where you can actually see what it looks like when the honey is actually full. Otherwise, this is what they'd look like normally. So to get the nest, you do need to use Silk Touch on a naturally generated one that you find in your world. You guys suggest using some flowers in your hand to prevent the bees from attacking you once destroying it. Let's go ahead and test it. So I just silk touch it, and there was a bee inside. So it seems like the bee didn't actually come out. So I'm just gonna put some bees outside and give it a try. So let's go ahead and get into survival and tear down this nest. They are mad. Let's see if I switch to flowers. Oh, yeah, it seems to work. It seems they no longer, I mean, they're mad and they're trying to sting me, but they're actually not stinging me. They're kind of like peaceful, but yeah, they're kind of glitched out. They're turning upside down and stuff like they want to sting me. So I guess that's one way to prevent the bees from attacking you once you have taken their nest. And you can silk touch the nest with bees inside of it so that you can easily transport them to your new place. Or you can always have like leaves to move them, or you can just hold flowers to move them. See, they're attracted to my flowers. That's how you breed them as well. Bees are also attracted to wither flowers, but they'll actually take damage when they're trying to harvest the nectar for them. But they will still attempt to do this, and they will end up dying from these wither roses, since they do produce the wither effect whenever a mob gets inside of them. There's also some other weird stuff to do with hives. So if I go ahead and just set block a bee nest here, and then we'll set it to have a honey level of 4, so not quite full. So this is level 4, and right now, if I go ahead and update this, we got some bottles in there, and we have just a small redstone device which is going to activate this dispenser when powered. And the computer is going to be reading the nest, and we just have a subtraction mode going on here. That way, you don't need that really long redstone if you don't want to. You can have this small subtraction so that it only powers when there is a level of so high. So I just set this one to level 4. Go ahead and place a block here. You see that it shoots out a bottle of honey. And if you look at it, it still says level 4. So if you power it again, yeah, it drops another one. So you can essentially just keep getting honey from this. So you could like hook a lever up to this. And you can see we're just constantly getting honey from it, and it's only level 4, not level 5. And it's never actually emptying either. So even though you can constantly keep getting honey bottles using the dispenser, if you come in with your player and try to right click this, you won't get anything. Now we also did some other testing during the stream to do with how the bees are being aggressive. And what we tested to see if a player would go ahead and punch a bee, bees would try to attack them, right? And notice how they're not attacking my other account even though I'm in survival. They're just going after the main one. But if that player would log off, then all the bees are going to turn and start to try to attack me. So it's very similar to like pigmen, where if there is pigmen that are aggroed, they're going to go after the player that hurt them, but as soon as that player logs off, then they're just going to go after whoever else is in the area. So these guys are all trying to attack me now. And if the other person would go ahead and log back in again, they're still going to be mad at me and not really be concerned about the other player until I log off. And they're also like pigmen, where if you have super high strength and you hit them and kill them, they won't aggro on you, as the bee that you killed is instantly killed. He's unable to inform the other bees. And even if you do die, the bees will still be aggroed towards you. So watch out for that. This is not only a really effective automatic drop farm, as you can see, but also getting those honey loots from the bees. So if you guys would like to build this up in your very own world, we'll provide the world download down in the description. And you can check out the other farms that we have designed during the stream as well. So if you guys did enjoy this video, be sure to go ahead and give it a like and share with someone else so they can learn about all the cool things that you can do with the bees. And if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to go ahead and do that, as I really enjoy making these type of farms, and you'll definitely see a lot more of this on my channel. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. See if you guys get me down here in the water. That's what I thought, guys. I'm safe from you. Bye-bye.